Hi everyone, this is Adam Jackson here from the UK. Very warm welcome to the Cloud Skills Show. If this is the first time you've joined Cloud Skills Show, we broadcast at this time every week on MMS Learn TV, on MS Dev UK, on Twitter, and a few other places as well. So wherever you're joining us, you're very welcome. We've got people joining us from around the world in this week's episode. But if you're new, the Cloud Skills Show is a weekly live stream. The objective of the show is to talk about technical skills, talk about the latest stuff that's coming out of Microsoft Cloud, news and announcements, and also meet guests from around the world and tech ecosystem. In this week's episode, episode 5, we're going to be talking about building for the web. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking a bit about Azure Static Web Apps with Jay Gordon, who's coming up next. Then later in the show, we're going to be meeting some of our community members. And finally, we'll end the show by talking about Blazor, which is a technology that I think a lot of people are really excited about. Still, relatively new technology, but something that a lot of people are talking about in the .NET community. So anyway, we're about to meet our first guest today, and that is Jay. And there he is on the right. And Jay, you're going to talk to us a bit about Azure Static Web Apps, right?
Talk a little static apps, and I really enjoy talking about really one of the best to take simple applications, putting them in simple spots, and not only that, actually implementing methodologies. When I say DevOps methodology, about is continuation. With that service, I think you're going to of a group to use alongside of it. So we're going to kind of take a look at that. I'm going to people static web work. So, take what you say. Just making everything going well.
We're actually getting a bit of bad audio on your line. I don't know exactly what's happening on your side, but we're getting some breakup. I know you sounded fine just before we started. I don't know if you can switch the audio over. Sort of in and out. I don't know if you can send your audio through your AirPods or something.
How are we doing now?
Talk from...
Hi. So how's it going?
Yeah, that sounds okay. We'll give that another try anyway. Yeah, I'll just be here for a second.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I'm in the middle of moving, and sometimes when you're doing these types of things, stuff that you don't expect doesn't always work out. So one of the things I want to talk to you about first is static web apps, and I've got a quick couple of things to show you. Give me one second while I bring it up. And we'll talk a little. I'm going to bring up something for you to see, and after we do that, what I'm going to do is then do a quick demo of how you can start implementing static web apps. So let's go ahead and share this screen. Adam, would you? Thank you. So Azure Static Web Apps is a service provided by Azure that gives you a single unified workflow with GitHub Actions. What does that mean? Well, that means that you can use different services and integrate them alongside with Azure. And one of the things that we're taking a look at is how to integrate GitHub Actions, make it work serverless, APIs integrated directly, powered by Azure Functions. So we're in a situation that if you're writing a static web app and you don't have the ability, say, to write a whole bunch of boilerplate code because you have to integrate maybe a database service, maybe you want to integrate, say, a single sign-on. What we can do is we can integrate serverless APIs using Azure Functions to integrate the servers to make it a little bit easier for you. And then, like I said, we can integrate authentication with flexible roles and access to make sure that only certain people can get to what we want, only certain people can publish to what we want, and these are really important. So here's kind of an idea of how Azure Static Web Apps is going to kind of come together for you, is that you're going to take your code and you're going to push it to GitHub. And every time you push a change to GitHub, what's going to happen is it's going to trigger a CI/CD process within GitHub Actions. So this is coming from Azure and eventually providing you with this service. Let me hide this little thing. There we go. I think that looks a little better now. Cool. Aside from that, then we also talk about, once we do our CI/CD process, like I said, we can implement APIs for serverless usage so that we can use those extra services without having to write boilerplate additional code. And then what we can do is we can route these requests from your API or from your app to this API. So what we can do is create HTTP triggers from your application to this API to go ahead and say, hey, I want to send a certain amount of emails that were collected. And when that happens, what we can do is say, have that email go through a function that eventually puts it into a database, and then we can go and do something else with that database email information after. So like I said, API integration, going the wrong way. Then what we can also do is implement SSL and custom domains. So one of the things that's great about this service is out of the box, you're going to get an HTTPS fully qualified domain. If you want to modify that fully qualified domain and create a domain with your own use, that's fine. Authentication, huge. We need to make sure that only the people get in. That's a built-in service to static web apps. Security roles, another big portion, creating different publishers, different editors, things like that. You can create roles within Azure. You only allow certain people to publish, only allow certain people to create resources. Things like that I think are really, really useful. Global scale. That's one of the big things we talk about at Azure. It starts and ends with our ability to give you global scale for your applications. And that means even a little HTTP web app. And then finally, all of these great services come together to give you your static web app. And that's kind of what we're going to do today. So I'm going to show you a couple of bits of information. One, if you want to do any of the things that we're doing today, you can get Azure for $200 for free. I'm going to kind of set up a quick demo for you. What we're going to do is show you how to actually use something as simple as a Hugo blog. And we're going to take that Hugo blog and we're going to bring it to static web apps. So I've already cloned my application here. And I want to just give you an idea of what's in it. So I'm going to give you all the code here to work in. If you need to get this, Adam will get you the links. But it's just, if you go to my GitHub repo, Jdestro, you go to Rico info. It's a simple Hugo website. All it's really meant to do is give you something to demo this service with. If you want to take this, customize it. If you want to do something different using another Hugo blog, go for it. So what we're going to do is take a look at it, and this blog is Hugo. Hugo is a static site generator. If I run the binary in here, you kind of get this thing here. There's just a little bit of an error, but what I wanted to show you here, which is more important, is how it's made up. So if we go here and we look at how everything's put together, what we're going to see is there's a couple of directories, and one of the directories is content blog. And in here is a bunch of markdown files. And these markdown files can be converted into static. And so what we do is we run the Hugo. So let me just switch to bash. I think that's what it was. And so if we do this command of Hugo in the root, there's something that I have to fix. Git pull, let's see. Whatever. We'll figure it out another time. What I'm really more curious about here is how we can get this application online. And what happens is when you run the static site generator, it goes ahead and it takes these markdown files, so pug facts. And if we go here to categories, we'll see the different categories, we'll see the different static resources, all these different things that eventually become our blog. Here's pug facts, here's index. It's all generated by Hugo. It's just a command that you can run. And on top of that, it just creates all this HTML for you, just out of Markdown. Pretty easy. It's all in here. You can see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this static and we're going to put it online. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the Azure portal. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Resource. And one of the things we're not going to do is we're not going to implement an API today. We're not going to implement any sort of serverless. And that's only because I want you to see how quickly we can do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and type Static Web App here in the new resources. It gives you just a brief overview of what it is. We'll click Create. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new resource group. We're going to call it Cloud Skills, because that's what we got here today. We got Cloud Skills. So let's go with it. All right, so we'll create our new Cloud Skills. Cool. Ooh, forgot to hit create. No, sorry. Cloud Skills. And also, when people watch me type, I always make typos. So just being real. So next, we're going to give it a name. And let's be honest, this is not going to be the host name. This is just an identifier. You're going to get a host name from the service. It's a random generated one. So we're just going to call this one Cloud Skills. And then we're going to pick a region. These are all the different regions within Azure that this is currently available in. Remember, this is a preview service. That means that it's only available in certain areas, and it's free. So let's use it. So the next part of it is we need to get our code. And to get our code, we can just sign in with GitHub. And so what you do is you provide a single sign-on authentication. If you've never signed on before, you'll do your two-factor if you've got that configured. Should work out great for you. So what you'll see now is my GitHub account is now attached. And now I actually have to find my repo. So we'll go to my organization. That's me, JStro. We'll go to the repository. And in this case, it's repo info. And then we'll pick the branch. And so we'll pick the branch of main. And now we're going to go ahead and build the build presets. And these are the things that it's actually used to build our site. And what do we have here? We have these different frameworks. So Angular, React, Svelte, Vue for you, JavaScript, and there's Gatsby, Hugo, all this stuff. So what we're going to do is pick Hugo. We're going to pick the application. So that's the slash directory. That's where everything's going to live, in slash. We don't need to have an API because we're not going to be using that. If we were, we would give the URL of the API location that we created in our Azure function. We put that in. Now, app artifact location. This is where these static pieces have been created. And that comes into a directory called public. So what we can do here is just type public. And what it's going to do is going to build a CI/CD process. So if you go ahead and click create, actually, you know what? Hey, Adam, why don't you come on for a second?
Hey, I'm here.
So we've got Ignite coming up, right?
Yep. Yeah, sure.
We've got Ignite coming up. How about, I've done this static site, but why don't I preview a static site that I'm doing for Ignite?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Oh, I'm saying, so I showed everybody how to do this one static site about my old buddy Rico. But what I think I'd love to do is everybody gets a quick preview of the static site I put together for Ignite this year. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to Ignite.
So it's kind of the same thing. So this time we're going to be using the TWT intern. This is my little static site I created for Ignite. Same thing, master branch. This is a Hugo blog. Application is slash API. We're not using an API. App artifact location, same exact thing. Public. That's where this has been stored. So next, we're just going to go to tags. This gives us the ability to add metadata associated. So if we wanted to say environment and say that this is the production version, we can do that. If we want to also add some billing and call this like department, so that we can have a cost center, what we can do is say department, let's say this is the TWT department. Okay, so now we'll go to review and create. And so what's going on right now is that Azure Resource Manager is telling us the subscription I'm building it on, the resource group that I'm creating it in. And a resource group is kind of like an empty carton of eggs. You put things into it, you take things out. When you're done, you can either just throw away all the eggs and the carton itself, or you can just empty out the carton and put new eggs in. And if one of those eggs goes bad, it's not a big deal. You can just take the one egg out. So that's kind of what a resource group is. Our region is our location on the planet where there's a collection of data centers that are owned by Azure that eventually will keep everything on. The repository, where my code is. The branch that I'm actually building from. The application is slash. App target. artifact location, public, tags, just some information. Now we'll click create. So while this is creating, Adam, can I give you just a quick idea of what I'm doing right now? So right here, what we're doing is we're starting to build our resource, right?
Yeah.
And when we get into our resource, we can see that we've got some essentials created. So let's go to the resource. This is the static web app within Azure. This is how it looks. These are all the portions. Let me just make it a little smaller for everybody. Once it's created, we're going to see we've got our new resource group, our location of where it is, and then this URL. Now, if we click on this URL, right now, there's nothing there. That's fine. And that's because we're now starting to go through the GitHub Actions process. Have you played with GitHub Actions again at all? Can you hear me, Adam?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Have you played around at all with the GitHub Actions yourself?
I have, yeah. I think one of the things about this, just like sort of really blows my mind, is it's just the simplicity of really getting started. And it was I remember like I've attended quite a lot of hackathons in my time, and I remember like Microsoft getting quite a lot of feedback about, hey, we love a load of the features in Azure. They love the UI of the portal. They love the things that they're really easy to add, like cognitive services. But actually getting a website set up was one of the things that was a little bit more difficult and took a bit more time to get your head around. So for me, just being able to build this quite easily is super exciting, because even someone like me who's not really a developer can quite easily get started.
And that's one of the cool things that I want to give everybody a quick rundown. And so right now what we're seeing on the left side is the fact that there's a CI/CD process. We talked about how when we push something to master that it would trigger a process, and that's kind of what happened. When we went into Azure Static Web App service right here, and we created this, Azure got a trust with our repo. And that repository says the two of us can work together and we can deploy here. And so one of the things that happens is this workflow file gets created. And let's take a look at it. It's just YAML, and it gives all the information of what we're going to do to deploy our application. So it gives instructions on where to get our repository. It eventually tells it how to build it. It tells eventually how to do a trust between GitHub and Azure. And you can see right here there are static API tokens created between Azure and GitHub. You don't have to manually do that. And I want to show everybody, this is big, like huge stuff. If I go into settings of the repository and I go over here to secrets, we're going to see that Azure has added the secrets that we need to actually do our deployment. We don't have to manage that on our own. That's big time like simplicity for your deploy process. So now let's just go. What happens to that workflow file? Every time you push to master, it goes ahead and begins the process of building your application. So it sets up the job. It builds our application. It runs all the associated things with Hugo, makes sure that it's able to build. We can see here, it even has the source directory, the destination. Here's the build of the files being rendered of our static and then our process image. And then finally, we see it complete. It creates a zip file that it packages up our file into. And then that zip file eventually gets pushed to our Azure Static Web App. It gets unpackaged and then goes to Azure. And then let's wrap it all up, all right? We'll click here on the URL, and here's our website. If we go to tags, we'll see about. We've got our content. And before we finish this up, I want to show you one more thing. What happens when you want to make a change? If I want to make a change, what I could do is I could go here into the repository. So let's open it up. And any change I make here, so let's just say I go into the README, which is just literally any push to master. And I just go into the README and I say, I found a typo. I'm just going to fix my typo. Deployment, installation, deployment, and more. Okay? Just let's change that. Literally any change to the repository. If we commit it, and I know you're not supposed to commit directly to master, this is a demo. This is a demo. So now let's go back to actions. We made a change. That could have been a change to a web page. That could have been changed to the application. That could have been adding an API. Doesn't matter. But now if we go, all we did was update the README. It starts a new build and deploy job and allows us to eventually go through the whole same process, deliver our application, and finally, our app is up. And so that is a quick demo to Azure Static Web Apps. It's a service that is still in preview. You have the ability to build applications smart with a workflow using GitHub Actions that makes a lot of sense for you and your team. So Adam, what else would you like to know before we kind of move on to your next guest?
Well, first of all, I just love the fact that you can break all the rules when you're doing the demo. Commit to master. That's brilliant.
Hey, it's a demo. Doing it live.
And so I guess, the things that really excite me, I think, like I said before, this, for me, this really is simplifying the workflow for folks that are just looking to set up that easy website. I think obviously it's relevant, it's relevant if you're in an enterprise or a larger business, but it's also, it's especially relevant to those smaller organizations, startups, small businesses, students as well. I think that's what I'm, really excited about is, having been to like tons and tons of hackathons, and, there's lots of different options for people in the past when they've been looking to stand up a website. But we offer people a lot of free trials of Azure. We offer students free Azure as well. I think we're going to talk about that next week in the student show, actually. So this is really exciting for people that are looking to actually demo something, as well as people that are looking to build something, a bit more long term. And so I think what excited me is, you just mentioned about breaking the rules. Well, you can break the rules, and when you're trying stuff out and you're learning about it, that's what's really exciting.
And you brought up one really cool thing, and just to kind of give you a quick wrap this in a pretty bow, you mentioned that for students that this is great, and actually the demo site that I showed everybody today is actually a student geared one. This year at Microsoft Ignite, I'll be in the student zone. I will be helping out teaching everybody beginners DevOps this year, which I'm super jazzed on, because DevOps has been my career. It has been how I got to being here with you right now, and to be able to teach students how a group of interns can take the jump into DevOps, I think is going to be a lot of fun. So I know you got plenty to do this year for Ignite. I know I got plenty to do. We're all going to have a great time. And if you haven't signed up, please register now.
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about Ignite a bit towards the end of the show. Actually, really excited for this year. I think it's it's going to be one of our biggest events ever. Certainly, I don't know. Were you there last year, Jay? You were at last year's Ignite, weren't you?
Yeah. I've spoken, I believe, at the last previous two, and I've been on a number of the Ignite tours.
Yeah, and I remember that last year, and I don't remember the total number of people coming, but it's it's tens of thousands of people that were there in Orlando last year. It's just a crazy number. But we had hundreds of thousands of people watching Build earlier in the year, and that was right at the start. When we just started out doing virtual events. So I'm really excited to see how many people tune in to to Microsoft Ignite this time, especially with all those different things like the student zone and the different topics to choose from. And of course, I've got a bit of a soft spot for the live show as well. It's sort of like on the main screen when you load up the Ignite website. I'm going to be doing a bit of moderation on there myself. So looking forward to meeting people from across the globe. It's really exciting time. But yeah, I think I wanted to close out this bit just by saying that, like Jay has, loads of cool resources. I think I could tell you that loads of websites, but actually one of the best places is just, I put a Twitter handle up there, just to check out your Twitter. You link to loads of stuff on there. You're really great at sharing resources.
And there's one thing I'd love to remind, because we're actually doing it today. One of the things that I do every single week is a show called Azure Fun Bites. It's a really great opportunity for you to get a quick introduction to a lot of different fundamental services associated with Azure. This week, I'm going to be working with Steve Morawski. We're going to be talking about more DevOps. Last week, Donovan Brown joined me. I've had guests from all over. I've had guests from third-party vendors like Datadog. We're doing really cool things. And like I said, we're talking to Steve this week for DevOps on Azure. If you're on the East Coast, 2 p.m. Eastern, anywhere else, check your watch. I don't know how to do that. But 2 p.m. Eastern today and every Thursday. If you want to join, please watch. I think you're going to get a lot of information. You're going to meet some fun people in the chat room, and hopefully you're going to learn a lot of great stuff about Azure. So, Adam, I believe I am free to give you your next guest. Hi. Well, Adam's a little busy. I'm going to do a little bit.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. That's why I was talking to you, and I was sort of thinking, why are you not hearing me? It's my bad. I was saying that show is today, isn't it? Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's So 2 p.m. That's like
was
7
that 7?
7 in the UK, 8 if you're watching continental Europe. Otherwise, just check your time zone converter. Really, really exciting. So that's Azure Fun Bites for that. Cool, Jake. Thank you for joining. Hopefully, we'll see you again soon. Really appreciate you being here. I think we're going to add Chris in now. Oh, there he is in the middle. I love how this sort of adds people in. I never know where people are going to appear. Chris, huge welcome to Cloud Skills Show. We're going to say bye to Jay for now. See you in a bit. Chris, I mean, you're going to talk to us about Blazor, but it's also like a pretty special week for you as well, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. So my wife gave birth to our first son, our first child, full stop, this time last week. So yeah, it's been an interesting 7 days.
That is absolutely epic. I think we've actually potentially got there as well, baby Blazor.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to say before we get started, huge congratulations from all of us here at Microsoft, and also, I can see that Claire's gift.
Yeah, Claire's gift game is strong.
Huge congratulations, and also thank you for being with us today as well. I mean, wow, that's you're on here and you've got all of that going on as well. So, I know that you've got, you talk about Blazor a lot, and, people are really excited about Blazor. I remember, I think you did a chat, I think it was like last year, like time sort of like blending away from it. Was it like the DDD event that we had at Microsoft in Reading?
That's it, yeah. Because that was really cool, because that was my first ever conference talk, like a real conference. I'd done a couple of meetup groups before that, so that was brilliant to come to Microsoft sort of HQ UK and do that talk. And yeah, it's great. Everyone's like really interested in Blazor. It's got it's gaining more and more momentum. There's some just awesome stuff coming from the Blazor team. So yeah.
Awesome. So, I mean, I suppose the question is, and, I'd heard of Blazor a little while ago. I mean, it's sort of like the industry we're in, but, realistically, like when you came last year and did your conference talk, that was sort of the first time I sort of really thought to myself, like, actually, what is it? Like, what is Blazor? So, I think, it'd be great today if you sort of like explain to people that are watching, what is this, and, how can you actually get started?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. So I'm going to take you through a PowerPoint deck. And then right at the end, I'll just kind of show you how to create your first Blazor app in Visual Studio. So I'm just going to move some windows around and share my desktop. So let me just get this going. So that should be sharing, and I just want to start PowerPoint now. And that should be coming through okay. Awesome stuff. Cool. So what is Blazor? That is the question, isn't it? So simply put, Blazor is a framework for building single-page applications. So that might not sound particularly exciting, maybe, straight off the bat. We've got frameworks like Angular and React available. But the big difference with Blazor is you can build these web applications using C# instead of JavaScript. So it's not always completely JavaScript free. but you can get a long way without having to use JavaScript. And I think as time goes on, we could be in a position where we completely eliminate the need to use JavaScript entirely. So as a framework, Blazor comes with all the stuff that you would kind of expect out of the box. So it's a component-based UI, so that's in line with most other front-end frameworks right now. So React, Angular, Vue, they all take this approach of using component-based UI, which is effectively carving up your UI into small pieces that are sort of defined and you compose them together to create these rich UI experiences. Blazor also has built-in routing, it has authentication and authorization, and it has great integration with Azure services. So when you're creating a new Blazor application in Visual Studio, you can literally go through a few checkboxes and you can hook up to your Azure AD or Azure AD B2C, for example, and that just all kind of will set all of that stuff up for you when it generates your project. So that's really cool. We've got dependency injection baked in, data binding. There's forms and validation there, and that works with existing ASP.NET Core validation system called data annotations. And you've got globalization and localization put in the box. And this is just some high-level highlights. There's obviously a lot more there as well. I could fill the screen up probably twice over. So that's kind of some of your big bits. And there's even more stuff coming with .NET 5 in November, which I'll touch on at the end. So what's really interesting about Blazor and what's really cool about it, aside from the fact of being able to use C# to write web applications that run in the browser, is the way that it's been built. So it kind of has this separation between the way you write your applications, which is like this app and component model, and how it and where that application actually runs, so the hosting model. So what I'm just going to kind of try and illustrate this. It's quite a key point to understand when you're first getting into Blazor, because it can seem a bit confusing. So if we think of a Blazor application and its component model, and that's where we write our components, and that's where the DI is configured and all this kind of stuff. It has this notion of renderers, and renderers know how to then take your code and display that somewhere. So by default, Blazor has a web renderer, and that knows how to render the code from your component model out to a web browser, okay? But this flexible kind of separation creates some interesting options. So what we can also do is kind of stretch this rendering process out between the component model and the renderer and have them in separate locations. So you can have Blazor running over here, and you can have the rendering happening over here. They don't need to be on the same machine. Blazor could be running on a server. The renderer could be rendering out to a client somewhere. And that's an interesting one that we'll delve into a bit more in a second. But where things get really interesting is the fact that we can actually replace these renderers entirely. So we can actually remove the web renderer that ships with Blazor, and we can replace it with different ones. So a native renderer, and this native renderer might know how to output to a mobile device, for example. And that's an experiment that's been going on for a while now called mobile Blazor bindings, where you can write Blazor components and you can have them render out to native UI, and under the hood, that's using the Xamarin Forms technology. And Blazor is also going to be sort of an option further down the line for the new ASP.NET Core MAUI framework that's coming out soon. So this is all really exciting. It's a way that you can write applications and learn one application model for UI, potentially use them to create desktop apps, web apps and mobile apps and stuff like that. So that's really cool. But the two main hosting models that people will have heard of, or if you haven't, these are them. So we have Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly. So Blazor Server is one that uses that stretched out renderer I mentioned a second ago. So your application will run on the server, and only kind of updates will be sent down to the client browser. And it's a bit like a thin client scenario. And we're going to look at this in more detail in a second. And then you've got Blazor WebAssembly. And this is the one that a lot of people tend to get much more excited about, because everything runs in the browser. Your C# code executes directly in the browser using this underlying web standard called WebAssembly. And we're going to have a look at that one as well in detail. What's really cool about both these models, though, is you write components the same way. So this is an example of a nice simple Blazor component. This is a counter component. And if you've seen any Blazor stuff before, you're probably sick of seeing the counter component, so I do apologize. But it's a nice, good, simple example. And Blazor components are split into these two halves. At the top, you have this markup, which is HTML mixed with some C#, and that's what we call Razor. And at the bottom, you have this code block. And in there, you can write any kind of valid C# code you wish. In this example, the current count gets printed out in that P tag. And on the button, we have this on-click handler. And when we click that button, it's going to invoke that increment count method that's defined in the code block. Okay, so I'm just going to now take a step back and we're going to look at a bit more theory here. So we're going to go through the fundamentals of both Blazor WebAssembly and Blazor Server, and because we really need to understand these two core hosting models before we can really understand which one we want to use to build a Blazor app. So Blazor WebAssembly, the first thing I want to talk about quickly is WebAssembly, because it's the underpinning of this technology. So WebAssembly, which is abbreviated as Wasm, which I think is a very fun word to say, is basically it's a binary code format, and it's really, really fast. In fact, what WebAssembly promises is near native speeds running in the browser, which is a really interesting concept when it comes to web development, because if we can make web apps as fast as native apps, potentially we don't need native apps anymore, which is an interesting thought going forward. Generally speaking, with WebAssembly, though, we don't tend to write WebAssembly directly. You can. There is kind of a textual representation of it that you can write in, and then you can compile it down. But generally, it's a target for higher level languages like C++. So just to illustrate that, on the left here, you've got a C++ method, and on the right is what it looks like in Wasm's textual version. I mean, I probably wouldn't want to write that stuff on the right. That's a bit too low level for me, but if you want to, you could. But yeah, it's not usually the way things are done. WebAssembly itself is a web standard, and as of December 2019, I believe, it's officially the fourth language of the web. Okay, so this isn't a plugin model. This isn't something that's theoretically coming and it's whatever. This is here now. It's baked into all of the major browsers, and like I say, it's the fourth language of the web after HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Where WebAssembly comes into play with Blazor is it's actually to do with a .NET runtime. So the mono .NET runtime itself is run through a toolchain called scripting, and out the other side produces this .NET.wasm file, and that is the actual .NET framework, or the .NET runtime, sorry, compiled down to WebAssembly. Now, this is where Blazor uses it. So Blazor is now going to run on top of that WebAssembly version of .NET. So just to be clear about this, your application itself right now does not get compiled to WebAssembly. That's something called AOT, which is ahead of time compiling, and that's something that will be coming probably in .NET 6, which is sort of scheduled for November 2021, but it's not there right now. So right now it's just the .NET runtime that's using WebAssembly. So to try and kind of really cement how that works, we're going to go run through a scenario here of how a Blazor WebAssembly app actually boots up. So we're going to make a request to a server like we do with any other kind of application, and the server is going to return to a load of static files, so static HTML, CSS, images, JavaScript, these WASM files, and your application DLLs and stuff like that. And when that hits the browser, a DOM gets made, and we execute this file called Blazor WebAssembly.js. And what's happening next is the .NET Wasm runtime gets booted inside of the browser, then Blazor gets loaded on top of that, and then your application gets loaded on top of Blazor. So this really is .NET running inside the browser, okay? There's not any kind of weird transpilation going on. We're not secretly making this JavaScript under the hood. This is genuinely a .NET runtime executing real .NET DLLs inside of the browser. There's a little divide there as well on that browser window. So just to illustrate, there is a bit of Blazor that lives inside of JavaScript. And that's because right now WebAssembly does have a bit of an Achilles heel. It can't actually manipulate the DOM directly, so you can't actually remove elements in and out of the page directly using WebAssembly. Right now, we still have to use some JavaScript to do that, but that is something that WebAssembly is looking to do further in the future. So now we've got a booted up Blazor WebAssembly application. How do we interact with it? How does Blazor work when we interact with it? So I've got a quick example here. We've got this kind of view on the left of our theoretical page with search results. And when we click that load more button, we want to load in the next batch of search results. So we're just going to walk through how that kind of all works through the framework. So when we click on that load more button, this click event is handled by a component somewhere. So in this case, it's this search component. And this search component is then going to do something. It's going to make a call out to an API, for example, to get some more data. So in the browser, we haven't got the normal HTTP client that we would use in the rest of ASP.NET. So we have, under the hood, we have the browser's fetch API, which allows us to do this. Blazor does some stuff to allow us to still use the HTTP client from ASP.NET Core. It just does some magic under the hood that calls the browser's fetch API. So what happens is we go down to that bit of Blazor that runs in JavaScript, and we make that API call. It comes back, and then whatever the result of that call is, it's passed back to your component code. So all of that happens under the hood. You don't care about that as a developer. You just use normal C# code. Once those results are back in our search component, we're probably going to update a list or something of the search results somewhere, and that's going to trigger Blazor to re-render the UI because the state has changed. We've got some new information there that needs to be put on the screen. So that's what happens next. Blazor calculates some UI updates. And what it's going to do is work out the absolute minimum amount of changes it needs to do to update the UI, because updating the UI is quite expensive. Once it's worked those out, it's going to ship those down to that bit of Blazor in JavaScript. And then that in turn is going to update the DOM, and then we can see those changes rendered on the screen. But all of this has happened in the browser apart from that API call. Okay, there's no other reliance on the server at all at this point. So to kind of give you some high-level highlights of where Blazor WebAssembly is really useful, as I said, it runs on the client, so you can offload a lot of work to the client, which can be good for scalability. You've only got to worry about the server-side calls, which is handy. It can work offline, so it's really trivial to make Blazor web apps into PWAs, which is great. And there's even a tick box to do that when you're creating a Blazor application. We can deploy this as static files, which means for the first time, if you're using a standalone Blazor WebAssembly application, you can actually deploy to free or even cheap hosting, things like GitHub Pages or Azure Blob Storage, for example. You can host there for next to nothing, which is great. But really, one of the big selling points of Blazor is if you're using C# on your API. If you're using C# on your API, you can actually share code between Blazor running on the client and the server, which is really, really cool and can be a real big time saver if you're a .NET, full stack .NET house. Then we've got Blazor Server. So I'm going to run through the same examples here. So we're going to talk about the same thing. So how do we boot a Blazor Server app? So what we're going to do, first of all, is make the point that Blazor is now running on the server in this scenario. Okay, so we're stretching that renderer out between the client and the browser and the server. So in the same thing, we're going to make a request to the server. We're going to get some information back. We're going to get some HTML back, some CSS images and JavaScript. Once that hits the browser is going to construct the DOM, and there's going to be, this time around, there's a file called Blazor Server.js. And all this file really does is it establishes a signal R connection back to the server. Okay, and that's going to be used to transmit any events that happen in the browser back to the server to be dealt with and handled, and any UI updates that are calculated get sent back over that signal R connection back to the browser to be rendered to the user. So we'll take our search results as an example again. What happens, we'll have a look. It's very, very similar to the WebAssembly version. So we're going to click that Load More button. That's going to get intercepted by that bit of Blazor that runs on the client and sent over that signal R connection. Once we're back on the server, that event is going to get passed to your component, same as it was before. This time around, we're probably going to just call a database probably because we're on the server at this point. We don't need to make API calls, although you could if you wanted to. That is then going to update that search component, that search list again, and those results are going to get calculated, those UI updates, same as it was before, except this time around, those UI updates are going to get shipped over the Signal R connection back to the browser. And then once it hits that bit of Blazor in the browser, it's then going to update the UI as it was before. So usually what happens now is people get quite concerned. There's a lot of back and forth. So instantly it's like, well, can it scale and what's the performance like? It's very chatty, all this stuff going back and forward over the wire. Well, actually the Blazor team did some experiments, and this was done in 2019 or 2018, I think, but I think they're still quite relevant. So on a standard D1 V2 instance in Azure, which is one virtual CPU and 3.5 gig of memory, a Blazor server app could support 5,000 concurrent users. And these are active concurrent users. This wasn't just connections. So pretty good. And if you beef up the CPU and memory, you can support 20,000 on that D3 V2 instance. So Blazor server can scale, it can handle that chat quite well. Latency is the only thing you really need to think about. So you want to make sure that you want your server and your users to basically be on the same continent, really. As long as you can do that, then you're going to have a fairly good experience. In terms of the reasons why you want to pick Blazor server, well, you've got a much smaller payload. There's less to download because it's not all running in the browser. So it can be very fast to boot up your applications. You are using the full runtime as well because you're running on the server, which is great. So you have full access to .NET Core there, whereas in the browser, you're running in a sandbox environment, so you can't do quite as many things as you could on the server. And you also get some code security because your code isn't executing on the client, so you're not shipping all your code down to the client. It stays on the server. You're only shipping HTML, really. So that can be a bit better for security. I'm just going to do a demo, but Adam, I'm just going to really quickly need to hop off because my wife is at the door and she can't get in. So if I could just nip away for a minute, that would be really, really handy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So yeah, we'll see you in just a second. So it's really exciting actually to hear about Blazor in a bit more detail. And certainly for me, it's it's something that's still quite new. I know that we're probably going to hear quite a lot more about it at Ignite, and in a few minutes' time, we'll talk about that in some more detail. But in the meantime, if you have not registered for Microsoft Ignite, I definitely encourage you to do so. We'll be bringing the website up at the end. Chris, it sounds like you're back.
I'm back, yes. Ever so sorry about that. I completely forgot. I've locked the door and she didn't have any keys.
Which is live. It's live TV. It's live TV.
Cool. Right. So, quick demo. How do we create our first Blazor application? So, I've got Visual Studio 2019 here. I'm going to go to create a new project button, and Blazor's built in now. So you can see here in the list of application types, I can select Blazor app here, and I can hit next. This is going to pick a name. You can put a name in here. I'm just going to leave it as the defaults and hit create. And then we get this second step. So this is where we can pick that hosting model we talked about. Now I'm going to take it off .NET 5 because I do live on the preview line at the moment. So I'll take it back to .NET Core 3, which is the current stable release. And in here, we've got those two hosting model options I mentioned. So we've got a Blazor server app or a Blazor WebAssembly app. So that's where you can make your choice at this point as to what type of hosting model you want to use. I'm going to go with Blazor WebAssembly. So I'm going to go with that one here, and I can just hit create. And then Visual Studio is going to scaffold out that project for us. And after a second, we'll get loaded into the IDE. And now we have our first Blazor app. So if we have a look in here, we have the www root folder. And in here, we have an index.html file. And this contains a link to that Blazor WebAssembly.js file we saw in the slides earlier. This is what's going to load up everything that we need. But that's it. Basically, what's going to happen is our Blazor application is going to load into here. And that's something that's configured in our program file. And this is all set up for us. If we open up Program CS, we basically create a root component here called app, and we put it into this app element in our HTML. So before I go into any further, I'm just going to run this so we can actually see what it looks like, because it's always nice to see the end result, and then we can check back. So let me just drag window over here. So this is a Blazor WebAssembly application. Now, if I click around, you can see there's no full page refreshes going on. Everything here is running inside of my browser. There's no reliance on a server at all. I can click this counter button and I can increment a count. This is all happening live. And if I open this up, you can see in my, where are we going? We're going to go here, and I'm going to show you my application cache. And I'll just zoom in on this to make this a bit bigger. You can see that actually, if we look here, you can see DLLs. These are real .NET DLLs, okay, executing. They're all cached here in the browser. And there is quite a few of them. So genuinely, this is everything that's needed to run this application fully in the browser. Okay, so let's say no magic JavaScript transpilation going on in the hood, genuine .NET running in the browser. So that's what the app looks like. In terms of a component, we can find them in here. So we've got some page components. So if we open up this index one, this is the initial homepage you get with the base template. We create pages in Blazor by using this page directive at the top and then defining the particular route that this page looks after. So this is just got a /, which means it's the root page for our application. We can just write normal HTML in here if we want to, or as you can see here with this purple coloring, this is another component, this survey prompt. So here we're passing in this title of how is Blazor working for you? And if we go in the shared folder here, we can see that survey prompt. And in here, in the code block, we have this parameter, and that's that title that we passed in. We saw a second ago in that index.razor page. And then we just put it where we output it wherever we like in our markup, okay, using this @ syntax. And we just print it out there, and that's where it gets rendered on the screen. Other than that, I'm not going to go into loads more because hopefully I just wanted to really whet your appetite with Blazor and really point you in direction to go and get started. There's some great links. One I think that everybody should definitely take a look at is this one, which I can aka.ms/Blazor workshop here, which you can go to. This is actually been designed by the Blazor team, and it you can follow this. It's a self-guided course is the word I'm looking for. And you get to build the blazing pizza application, okay? And you can walk through this. There's all the different sessions here. It's got all the instructions you can walk through. It takes you from sort of not really knowing anything about Blazor at all the way through to a working application. And it's a really great one to go through if you're new to Blazor. So definitely check that out. And I think I've given some other links to Adam, which are also really useful for getting into into Blazor. So yeah. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And we always get a lot of links in these shows. And what I do is I compile them into a document, and then I put that page online. Now this link is not live yet, but hopefully if you check in a few hours on this link, which I'm going to put up, which is aka.ms/CS show 5, I can't say it. We'll have the links up there, but that was absolutely fantastic, and huge thank you for joining and demoing. What we're going to do now that we've joined the end, so we were hoping to have Samuel Adranyi, who's a Microsoft MVP from Ghana, join us, but unfortunately we've actually been unable to make the connection. So we're going to invite him back to one of the future shows. But we're going to bring Jay back, and we also have our friend Amy Boyd, who is one of our cloud advocates in the UK as well. And I thought we'd just spend the last few minutes just talking about Microsoft Ignite, because we've mentioned it a few times, and it's coming up quite soon. And Amy, sort of first of all to you, you've actually you've been doing a couple of specials on this show, haven't you? You've done a couple of live shows yourself on Learn TV.
I have. I had the opportunity to work with you on the AI Cloud Skills show, which was a treat. So many amazing people to speak to. And then, more recently, I had the opportunity to do the Countdown show for Microsoft Ignite. I was speaking with Seth Juarez and also Patch and Switch. You might know them as Patch and Switch, but Rick and Joey from our team, who spoke a little bit more about what to expect from Ignite. If I can, am I allowed to do a quick plug, Adam? Is that
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Countdown show is happening. So we started on the 3rd, but it's also happening the 10th, so today, and the 17th, just before Ignite. And it's 11 a.m. PST, which is 7 p.m. UK time. So we'll be on again this evening to chat a little bit more and just give you the ins and outs of kind of what's happening.
That's amazing. Well, I'm really excited about it, and I think I was just talking to, with Jay about it earlier, and we were just saying, there was, I can't even remember the number. It was some sort of mind-boggling number, like 30,000 or something like that. I don't know the exact number last year, but I think this year we're going to see even more than that, maybe. Well, I don't want to curse it, but I think that you will try to see a few more than that, right?
I was going to say it's running, 48 full hours, one after another, so it doesn't matter what time zone you're in. We sometimes feel that here in the UK. I remember watching my first build and staying up well into the evening. I was at Microsoft at the time, actually, and we did a little viewing party, which was good fun. But that was late into the evening after the keynotes. Do you? I was going to say,
we joined the developer division about the same time. So I think it was in the Microsoft Technology Center in Reading. We all sat around the table and watched it. I think we were doing sort of live chat as well. So, oh yeah, interesting times. It was all about
Whereas now, right, like it's all whenever you want to be awake, you choose what works for you. I was having an interesting call the other day where it was like, actually, you know, sometimes that like dinner time for the UK, which is sort of just before midday for Pacific time, it's actually the worst for us because like I get so hungry, so I just want to go and eat my dinner. But actually those later slots sometimes work even better. So yeah, it's kind of pick when you want to be watching because there's always going to be something to watch.
That is amazing. So maybe we could sort of ask, ask the other guests a question about, you know, what they're looking forward to most. Now, you know, without giving anything away, I mean, Jay, what's the sort of number one thing that you think people should look out for at Ignite this year?
Kubernetes. Why?
I only heard half of that, Jay. I think we have the audio issues back. I don't know if anyone else is the same. Oh no, Jay, I'm sorry, but we'll write it. Send it to me in a message, and I'll bring it up on the screen. I'm really sorry, we can't hear you properly.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Yes, I can.
A little bit better, yeah.
Say it again.
Cool. I think I'm a big Kubernetes fan, and one of the things I'm really looking forward to see is a lot of new Kubernetes stuff coming out of Ignite. There's been a huge advancement with 1.19 that was just released at KubeCon EU recently, and I honestly believe that that is a huge advancement for us at Microsoft Azure, and just little things like even ephemeral disks for containers on Kubernetes. It's all really cool to me. That, and I really got to say, I love the idea of the student zone. I love what's coming out of there. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jay. And Chris, I mean, the same to you. I mean, you can't just say Blazor. You've got to go in a bit more detail.
Why can't I just say Blazor? Why? Yeah, I'll be honest. I've not had a chance to have a look at loads of stuff yet because I've just been like, you know, eyes deep in baby stuff. So, but anything around sort of improvements around the static web app stuff that could possibly enable Blazor would be great. I know it's something that's definitely highly requested. But yeah, for me, it's I like I say, I've not seen anything specific as such. I'm just going to have a good peruse of everything that's on there and just sort of fill any spare time between feeds with great content. Yeah,
well, I'm sure you'll be taking advantage of the 24/7 live.
I'm sure I will. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the 2 a.m. ones. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I actually look forward to most as well, because the great thing is that I think there's about 200 sessions at Ignite this year, and you can't watch all of those live anyway, so you can watch them on demand. And what I would recommend to people is actually watch some of the live content, because that's a bit more unexpected and in the moment, and you get to interact with it. I mean, I'm biased because I'm one of the live moderators, so I'll be on there sort of holding the fort on the chat. So make sure you send plenty of questions, because people never do. I always have to provoke people to ask questions. I'm looking forward to seeing the interaction. Right, well, do you know what? I think that Learn TV is going to cut us off now, so we'll probably say bye to them. We are still continuing on our other channels, but we are going to say goodbye, but not before I thank you for being on today. So, first of all, huge thank you to Jay for talking us through Static Web Apps. I think that you're going to be doing a bit more. Are you going to do some more talks about that at Ignite as well, Jay?
Yep, I'll be doing a introduction to DevOps for the student zone. You'll be able to hear a cool story about some interns that work for the world's biggest fake company, Tailwind Traders, and some of the things that they have to do if there's some intern projects. So we're going to kind of learn how almost anybody can get started using DevOps in an organization, and especially someone who's a student. So we'll talk about that.
Love it. That's amazing. And thank you very much. I'm looking forward to that. By the way, the registration link is on screen there as well, myignite.microsoft.com. Sign up. Huge thank you to Chris as well. Yeah, never know which way to point on this thing. Huge thank you to Chris as well. Particularly for giving up your time. And you've had a new arrival. Again, congratulations from all of us at Microsoft. Really amazing news. And thank you to Amy as well for for coming on the show and telling us. Yeah, I think it was a preview for a preview. Your show was a preview. We're giving you.
It's just ignite madness for the whole month, isn't it? So there's always going to be something coming up. But yeah, the countdown show. Go check it out. 7 p.m. UK time, 11 a.m. PST.
I want to give a very early plug as well for Amy, because she's going to be back on. You're going to be back on the 1st of October as well, aren't you?
I am. I'm never off the show.
Not on this show. We're actually going to do a 6 p.m. special, 6 p.m. UK time. That'll be 1 p.m. in New York and 10 a.m. in Pacific. And I can't work out the other time zones. Just look it up if you can. But we are going to be talking about the AI Edge learning path with University of Oxford, aren't we?
Yes, yeah, I've had a fabulous time over the sort of last 18 months probably, working with the University of Oxford around some of their AI and IoT courses, and they're doing some amazing stuff. And so they're going to come show us what they've been doing, how they've been collaborating with Microsoft, and also how everyone else can find this course and also all the learning materials.
That's one too.
Well, we'll look out for that really soon, and I think we're going to have the registration page up for that in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully, maybe sooner. So register for Ignite, register for all the things. Make sure you attend the Student Zone, the lives, the live show. Make sure you watch all of the presentations, anything with Amy on, and also I will be back at this time next week. At this time, we're going to bring a show about student as well. So I think some people remember in our first episode, we talked a little bit about student resources. Well, we've got a whole show about it next week. So really looking forward to that. So join us same time, same place. And thanks very much to our guests today. And we'll see you all again soon. Thanks very much.
All right. Bye.
Have a good one, everybody. Be safe, be happy, and take care of yourself.
Hey.